Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the latest webinar in our Digital Church series. Today's webinar is on what's wrong with our website, and this is a webinar to focus on specifically on how to critique and assess your website, see what's wrong with it, see how you can improve it, focusing on 5 specific assessment criteria that we'll look at today. We'll look at briefly the process for website development, but we're really going to focus on looking at asking that question, what's wrong with our website and how can we improve it? Now, the subject of the church website can be a thorny one sometimes. Perhaps different people have had responsibility for maintaining and designing the site, and perhaps are a little sensitive to the inevitable criticism that's associated with it. Sometimes the situation is the site is updated by someone who's hard to reach, or seems to live in a different dimension perhaps, and who seems to be wholly dissociated perhaps from the value or effectiveness of the site. Sometimes people are just unreachable. Either way, perhaps the desire exists to make something happen with the website, and hopefully with the church's entire online presence. There is some satisfaction with the website and online footprint of the parish, and one of the more concerned people perhaps would like it to be improved. So let's make for this session a working assumption that that you have the willingness and time to initiate the project of working on the church website and would like it to be better than it is. And the obvious first realization, as you see here, is that unless someone, whether that be you or another person, cares enough, and enough may have to be a whole lot, then it's likely that nothing is going to change with the website. Second, it does seem repeatedly true in the Episcopal Church that we set a goal for ourselves and then proceed to build the trickiest obstacle course we can to climb over in order to get there. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to this kind of work. Thankfully, there are some consistent and useful guideposts we can use in this website assessment and design process. So we'll look today at some guidelines to use that help us to identify why our website isn't working and what we can do to improve it. We can't really know how to critique a website effectively if we don't have a sense of what we need to go into creating a site. So first we'll look at the roadmap briefly for a website design, beginning by asking where to start. And that can seem a daunting question. Often the most difficult part of a project is getting it started, and for this reason many website projects never make it past the head-scratching, navel-gazing stage, and it's difficult to get that momentum to get the project off the ground. For a great video case study on the web design process, please visit the Digital Church website, www.edow.org/digitalchurch, and look at the St. Paul's K Street Communications project video. It's a concise step-by-step look at how one parish and one diocese here successfully managed their website redesign process from start to finish. And they ended up with a great-looking website and a good communication strategy. Again, that's at our website, edow.org/digitalchurch. So, when you've begun that process and are ready to move forward, the first thing is building your team, forming an implementation team. For an implementation team to be successful, it needs buy-in from the rector and parish leaders. It needs to be a small team of, say, 4 to 8 people. Keep it streamlined. Don't be afraid to ask people who may have skills that you're in need of for the project. And set a timeline and deadlines, milestones for your project. The question then is, why? Why do this sort of work? Why are we doing this? What's the purpose of this project at all? So, firstly, we should identify what the goals are. What is the purpose? What are the goals for our website? Now, I'm presenting you some goals here that you may consider for your website. You may want to consider these as you begin to think about this and look at your own website. You may also want to look at the current site and assess the goals for the website that exists, and then proceed to assess it and see if it achieves these goals. So, particular goal, some goals we've identified here are to reach and speak out to people, inspire them to explore our faith and our community. That's one goal that you could set for your website, to be an evangelistic website. 2, extend an invitation. Invite people who are seeking a faith experience to join with you in that adventure. This is something, a goal you can set for your website, to speak to an audience. Use the language and content that appeals to the audience specifically that you're trying to appeal to. Again, this requires that you step out of the shoes of being in the church or inside the parish and step into the shoes of the audience, those people who you are trying to reach, trying to attract. A parish resource. Is the website able to serve the information needs of the existing church members? This could be a goal for your website. It sometimes isn't necessarily the primary goal, but it may be one of the goals. And to be an online anchor. The site anchors the information you put online. You put that information around on your blogs, your social media network, other pictures, etc. But your website is like your front door on the internet. It's your church's front door online. So, beginning with the understanding and looking at the goals, one of the places to start is telling the story of your church. What makes you unique? What is your story? And what is your passion? 2 things that make you unique are your people and your spirit. Who you are as people and what you're all about. No one else has the same particular combination of people, programs, and resources. What's unique to you that makes you interesting? Don't worry about the technology. Just pull the church together and ask, who are we about? Be passionate, and the rest will follow. Asking now who the audiences are you want to reach. This is a key part of the process. Who are the audiences you're trying to reach? What are they looking for? And how can the parish and the website appear irresistibly appealing to this audience? Again, you'll be looking at a primary audience and building your website, designing it with that primary audience in mind. So first it's identifying that primary audience, and then other audiences that you also want to provide information for. So the design will be designed around the needs and what appeals to the particular audience, not the other way around. So asking parishioners is a very good place to start. You can ask and survey parishioners, ask what their needs are from the parish, their expectations spiritually and otherwise. Ask what online tools they use, where do they currently get information, and where would they like to get information from, and what would they like to see the parish doing online. Be ready to meet your audience always where they are, whether they're using email, social media, websites, no matter where they are, video, pictures. Always go and plan to address and meet your audience online or in the place where they are most hanging out. Now, this isn't the focus so much of this workshop today, but in completing your website project, there are just those final steps after doing this initial work that you'll want to undertake, including reviewing other websites and creating your sitemap, creating the design and templates, and adding content to your new site and launching it. These will be the steps that you would usually follow in doing a redesign or a design process. Having looked briefly at the steps, we can now get from the start to the launch, we can now go back to the main question we asked at the beginning. What's wrong with our website? So we can move forward now and look at some review and assessment criteria. We can identify that we have our site goals in mind, and if there is an existing site, to identify what were the goals for that particular site. Use some solid criteria to grade the website, to look at it and assess it, which in turn is very helpful for guiding the design decisions on the website in the future. You can do this on your own website or other websites that you want to look at and review. If you're looking around at various sites, you can also draw up a grid that is quite helpful sometimes. Use a spreadsheet if you like, and look at each site. And as you do, on a scale of 1 to 5, grade each site in each of the criteria we're going to look at. The higher the total score for the site, then likely more informed was the design process. After you look at all these, You can then assess from the site what the site's overall goal or goals are. What does it seem to be trying to achieve from your viewpoint, and how well does it achieve those things? So of the five, the first one we're looking at is the look and feel of the website. These are the colors, the shapes, the layout, the buttons, the boxes, the whole graphical interface as you look at the site. So we're looking at the overall attractiveness of the site, including the layout. Is it consistent and intuitive? Does the color scheme seem to work? Are the buttons and boxes on the site well positioned and placed? And do they seem to work together? Second, appealing to an audience. Does the content seem to appeal to the particular audience it is designed for? Or could you see it appealing to a particular audience group for the site? Does it seem generic and put up for the benefit perhaps of the church or the organization that designed the site, or the sponsoring organization? Does the website reflect the internal organization structure of the site, or has it been designed to appeal to a particular audience by the designers putting themselves out and into the shoes of the audience they're trying to reach? The content. Is the content up to date? Is it interesting? Is it well written? Is it relevant? Engaging? Is it a good use of original and online sources for content? Is the navigation intuitive? Do you find the site easy to navigate and find things in 1 or 2 clicks? Or is it like a wild goose chase? Is it easy to remember where things are when you come back again? And 5, the functionality. Does the website contain features or modules, perhaps, applications that are particularly effective, and would it be of special benefit to your website? From the point of view of the visitor, does it contain interactive features? Does it have the ability for the visitor on the site to interact using forms, pictures, polls, surveys, social media, customized content for the visitor? Does this all feel integrated? Is it easy to contact someone directly from the website? So we have these 5 assessment criteria now. And we ask ourselves at the end of that, is there an evident goal or purpose in mind for the site? Do these measurements seem to support it? So we can grade again, use perhaps a grid if it's helpful. And sometimes it is when looking at multiple sites. It's helpful to use a grid, and for the columns at the top of each column, put the name or domain of the website. And down on the side, on the left side, put these 5 assessment criteria and grade each site in each area on level of 1 to 5. And then you'll be able to get a good assessment and see, look at different sites and see how each one seems to succeed or not. If you have questions during this workshop, by the way, during this online session today, please email training@edow.org. And if we have questions, I'll address those questions at the end of the session. Again, that email address is training@edow.org. Now, having looked at these 5 criteria, these assessment criteria, I'd now like to take a look at a few websites with you and go through them and pull up some examples and have a look, and we can see what it is that we would like to assess, which churches we would like to assess. And then we can begin to look at those critically and say, okay, what do we make of these? The first one I'd like to look at today is the First Baptist Church. First Baptist Church at the Mall, it's called. It's churchatthemall.com. Now we're going again to look at each of these sites with these 5 criteria in mind. And this is something you can do with your own church website using the same approach. So again, we're going to look at the look and feel, the audience, the content, the usability, the functionality of each site. So again, this site is First Baptist Church at the Mall. We start with looking at the look and feel of this website. Well, as we look at this website, we see that the colors seem to work well together. The theme is consistent there with the logo and the design and the background of the site. The design is pleasant, it's not particularly jarring, things are laid out in a fairly clear, intuitive way. The field is clean, it's well thought out. Layout is consistent, it's well designed. So perhaps if we were grading this, we might give this out of 5, perhaps a 4 or a 5. The audience, this is a church at the mall. It's very clear from the title of the site, from the domain of the site, that this is a church at the mall. It's targeted apparently toward casual visitors, visitors who are in that mall kind of setting, perhaps one-time visitors. There's prominent event information, 2 options on the site of next steps up the top there, and help me connect down here on the right. There are 2 options to immediately connect and to go further into the site and engage with this church. If we're looking at grading perhaps how well this site appeals to the audience, we might give it a 4 or 5 as well. The content, if we go in here and click on I'm new, for example, we see right away that there is content in the site that is designed for the particular audience. Again, down here on the right, you can sign up for email updates, you can search the website. The content here is directly written for the particular audience in mind. So the content, again, it seems to be well written, it seems to be engaging, it's inviting. In terms of usability, we go back to the home page here. Usability, now remember here we're looking at, is it easy to accomplish tasks and find things? Is it easy to navigate, remember where things are? If we're using this particular assessment criteria and looking at this site, we can see that the information here seems easy to find. Up the top here, there are menus that lay out specific areas of content that fall under fairly intuitive headings. Content is easy to find. Under About the Church, there's contact information, the name of the staff, about the pastor, the strategic vision. So in terms of usability, we'd give this a pretty high score as well, maybe a 5. In functionality, the site seems to integrate well. It integrates with social media. They have the latest tweets on the site. They have a Facebook logo, Facebook icon. They have the latest posts from different people in the parish. You can sign up for email updates. You can search the website. You can engage with the church right away. So in terms of the score that we would give this church, and again, this is stepping back from no matter how much you might like or not like the particular church itself in terms of its philosophy, ideology, theology, and stepping back and looking at this particular church, and does this seem to be a website that succeeds in what it sets out to do? The site seems designed to attract and inform casual mall visitors and does a pretty good job of that. So out of a possible 25, if we're using that level, that score, we might give this between 20 and 25. This is a pretty high scoring website. The next one I'd like to look at is another church website called sacredheartpeoria.com. This is a website that has a particularly different kind of feel to it. We begin by looking at the look and feel, and again, this is our first criteria we would use. Begin by looking at the look and feel of the website. We firstly notice the background. It almost seems like one of those 3D backgrounds that you look in and see hidden shapes in. The main item on the home page is telling you the time and the date and the scrolling name of the parish going across under the Sacred Heart icon. There are lots of buttons at the top, some with very similar words on, and they're the same color almost as the background. And if we look around and scroll down the page a bit, we see that there's no real content here isn't particularly dynamic, but that in terms of layout, the page goes on and on and on. And so in terms of the overall look and feel of this site, we're going to give this a fairly low score. This is not necessarily well thought out, well designed in terms of the look and feel. The audience. Now, if looking at this site and trying to discern who the audience is for this site, we might think, well, perhaps it's for people who are already in this denomination, who may be looking for a church. It has some technical Technical options at the top, RCIA, church bulletin, things that might be of interest to people already in the church. It doesn't seem necessarily to be connecting to existing parishioners. It has options here for weddings and sacraments, perhaps people who are more casually looking for a church. It doesn't appear to be reaching out to people who are not churched. So, and even then, in looking at the design of it, the overall kind of audience is not really clear who this is designed for. Especially considering that when the first thing we see is an icon, but then we have the current time and date and the scrolling name of the church down there. So it's not really clear when we look at this site who it's designed for. So we give this a pretty low mark in terms of audience. And the content for this website, if we go and click on one of these options here and have a look at it, and we click on Meet the Staff. If we look at this page, Meet the Staff, if we look at this, again, if we're looking at this page, the background to this page is different than the home page, but again, we're looking at the content. You see that the content of the site, it's written here in the first person by each individual, and the pictures are kind of in a slightly loud red background with a gray background, which is different from the home page. It's not the language is not necessarily professionally written. It's not necessarily professionally presented. It does contain contact information, but it doesn't seem like it's been designed, it's been written with a particular audience in mind, or that it's been written particularly professionally. In terms of usability, the navigation at the top here is fairly intuitive. We could probably remember how to get around, although the ordering of the navigation items is confusing, and there's no Contact Us button and no directions. So while we can see the options and they do seem pretty clear, I wouldn't necessarily give this great box in terms of it being able to find various items of key information and being able to remember where they are. And in terms of functionality, there appears to be no social media links, no interactive tools on the site, no search feature, no email sign up, nothing that would suggest that the parish has an interest in really connecting to or inviting the audience viewing this site into the church. There doesn't seem to be a particular audience in mind, but the content seems to relate to those already in the parish who are perhaps already Roman Catholic. But it is not really clear which group, and the design doesn't demonstrate any particular purpose or audience. So in terms of the overall kind of assessment of this, we give it pretty low marks in each of those categories. But we also see from this where the site could improve in various areas and where it needs improvement. The next church we're going to look at is ilovethischurch.com. This is called Journeys Crossing. And as we go down our assessment criteria again, and perhaps you'll be able to see these right away already, the look and feel, the colors on the site are lively. There's a green that's a theme there. It's consistent with the background of the page, with the logo on the page. The red on the right draws attention to the section that is under the curious heading. And then the stories on the home page bring your attention down to the personal stories of those people involved in the church. The one issue when you look at this is that the home page does tend to extend down a lot here, so you do have to scroll down, and it gets a little cluttered further down. So not quite as clean as the first site we looked at, but overall it's not too confusing, and the colors seem to work together, the styles seem to work together. So give this a 3 or a 4 perhaps in the look and feel category. In the audience, if we're looking for it, look at the words on the site right away. The words like relevant, will I fit in, why bother, what can I expect, it's church only different. So we're looking here and we see pretty clearly that this church is targeted probably for young people. For youth and young people, young families, younger people. Also, the main box down here on the home page The fact that you can watch us live and go to watch live every Sunday means this is a church that might appeal to an audience as well, a younger audience who might want to watch this online. So it seems that the audience is fairly clear and that the content on the site is designed for that particular audience and does that successfully. The content on the site, if we go and click on some pages, if we look on, say, perhaps the Connect page and see what we see there. On the Connect page, we're looking at this. We see the content. If we're reading this through, it's pretty well written. It's relevant and appropriate for the audience. The picture there is particularly appropriate and relevant for the audience in mind. If we go and click on, say, the Contribute page and have another look at another page, you'll see here also that the same kind of language is used. It's consistent across the site. They're appealing to the same audience as you can navigate through the site. So in terms of looking at this, we see that the content on the site is engaging, it's well written, and it's designed for the particular audience in mind. In usability, if we're looking at that, we do see that the navigation items, the language used is engaging. The curious section is good, is great, although the main navigation is a bit confusing. So we do have these options right here which are very appealing to the particular audience. But there are some things on the navigation that are not exactly intuitive, like freebies. There is no Contact Us option right here, seemingly visible on the home page. So there are a few things perhaps you might get confused about, such as contribute and give. These things maybe seem to overlap or be confusing, but certainly not significantly so. But these are points, but these are issues that we might seek to address if we were looking at a redesign. In terms of functionality, if I scroll down on this page here, and I'm looking at the home page, I can see we do have some social media presence on this page. I can't seem to share the page. There is a search box I can use. I can't share the page, but there's no email sign up. And if I go, for instance, into one of these curious will I fit in here pages, I do see some text and a video. But lower down in the page, I don't see any particular way to go deeper into the site. I don't see a place where I can get connected in a further way other than just reading this text and looking at the video. So it doesn't take me further. There's no further invitation or way to get connected or to submit my information to this church. Overall, for this website, we can see that the site is evidently designed to reach young people. It seems to succeed in doing that in how it's laid out and how it's written. People who are perhaps not in the church or outside the church or thinking about the issues around involved in their faith. There are a few layout usability challenges, but as we can see, overall the content does a pretty good job of achieving what it seems to set out to do. The final one we're going to look at today is Trinity Episcopal Church in Woodbridge, New Jersey. And I chose this because this particular site does have a certain resonance or feel of a lot of quite a number of Episcopal Church websites. So I chose this as it seemed to be kind of representative of quite a few sites where the church feels perhaps that they do need to do some work with the site, but don't quite understand perhaps or can't see what it is that they should have over and above what already exists on that. So let's begin to look at this using our same assessment criteria and go down and see what sense we can make of this. We start off with going back again to our question of the look and feel. As we look at this page, we see that the colors of the header, the graphical header there, versus the colors below it and around on the page don't seem to work well together. We have kind of a creamy yellow color down here. There's a rather jarring Episcopal shield in the middle of the page. Doesn't seem to be designed to be where it is. The header is kind of a curious, rather, representation of the church with crucifix with some sort of backdrop there to it, and the orange and black below there kind of conceals somewhat the website address there and the name of the church. It doesn't really attractively bring attention to the header on the page. So the navigation bar is in gray. and doesn't seem again to connect with the rest of the colors on the page. If we scroll down the page, we can see that there's some very large text, some very small text, a couple of kind of boxes on the page, and again, the content here doesn't particularly, the layout and the feel and the style don't particularly seem to work very harmoniously together, and the colors aren't necessarily appealing in the way that some of those previous sites we looked at were. So it's a little bit disorienting. In addition, if you look at the background for this site, as we scroll down, the background moves as well, which is a bit disorienting versus having an image on the background that stays where it is and just a pattern in the background versus an actual picture. If we go to our second criteria, the audience, this site seems to be for visitors perhaps who are already Episcopalian. And we think that perhaps because, well, there is words and language down here that seem like they would be particularly relevant or relevant to an Episcopalian audience. If we go in and look at some of the words here in the site, perhaps if we look at About Trinity and go down here and look at this, we can see, well, there's a brief history of the church here. There's content about the vestry and wardens. Again, if I wasn't Episcopalian, I wouldn't necessarily know who or what the vestry and wardens were and why they were on the website. So the audience for this site is perhaps designed to be a solidly Episcopalian one. It doesn't seem to have much design or resonance with a young audience. This may be designed for an older audience, but again, even for an older audience, there's nothing in mind, there's nothing here that specifically suggests that it's designed for an older audience, perhaps other than it serves the Woodbridge area since 1698, so perhaps people are interested in the history of the place. So we can't necessarily really discern the audience other than the fact that it's most likely for people already in the Episcopal Church. As far as the content on the homepage content there is welcoming. There is a welcome message and there is an invitation to visit the historic place and join in a worshiping community. But there's lots of other junk as well on the page here. There's various links and graphics that don't seem necessary to connect to the rest of the site. And if you click on About Trinity, the first thing you see is this history of the church, which is perhaps, if we're looking at the church and interested in joining this church, and the first thing we see is its history versus what the parish is about today, who's there, what sort of membership do they have, and does that membership resonate with me as the site visitor? I don't get the feel of that right away. So while the content is here, it isn't necessarily written or with the viewer in mind, perhaps more with the people inside the church in mind. So as I'm looking through this, and if I click on programs, for example, I'm seeing here some text that's formatted in all different kinds of sizes, and there isn't you have to scroll down on this page to see various things. But again, the language and text on this page isn't necessarily written specifically for an audience. It's probably copied and pasted in from content that already exists rather than being crafted for the site or for a particular audience. So again, not so great here. The content here needs to be reworked. It needs to be written and specifically guided and shaped for the particular audience that the parish has in mind. In terms of the usability, the navigation items on the site are fairly intuitive. As we look through them, we can see that they're fairly simple to understand and to get the sense of what each of these sections is. And if we were to leave the site and come back, we'd probably know where to look for information. The contact information, though, is right down here at the bottom. It's this list here, so it's kind of hidden away. So that's kind of hidden out of sight. But otherwise, the usability, there's not much in terms of telling us what's in these sections other than just simple links to them. But we can perhaps be able to find information once we get to the page. In terms of the functionality question, the site does have an embedded calendar. but there doesn't appear any link or any content here or any ability to interact with social media and other networks or photos, picture sharing. There's no email sign up. There's no site search. There are no forms. There's no sharing. There's nothing else really that seems to integrate with other networks or suggest that there's a great deal of functionality to this website beyond what we see within each of these sections as we looked at it. So overall, while the areas of the site seem to suggest that we do know where we can find things, the overall design and the content perhaps needs to be addressed significantly. The site seems to be designed for perhaps an older group of existing Episcopalians, perhaps parishioners themselves. And while the information on the site is easy to find, the design perhaps needs rethinking. The content, as we mentioned, is not necessarily well presented or written. And the site doesn't have a whole lot in the area of functionality for the visitors. So that's kind of looking at these four sites and to get a sense of how each one can be viewed and looked at in these different criteria, and how after that we look at each page and think about what the goals for the site seem to be, and does the site as it is presented and what our experience of it is, does it seem to be meeting and succeeding in the way that it was designed. So we looked at those four sites now, and hopefully those are useful to you as you begin to look at your own website, your own church website or your organizational website, and to use those. And I encourage you to go out and look around on the web for other sites and to look at other church websites and to kind of use these criteria to assess your church website. So I hope this information has been useful today. Like I said, you can find more information about this particular session online at edow.org/digitalchurch. I'll put links and resources about this session. Also, there are archived sessions from the Digital Church series on that website too, and complementary resources and links there also. Next session's coming up next year in February. We have a couple of sessions on media relations, so please look out for those. They'll be in the Diocesan Weekly Bulletin and also on the Digital Church website. Thank you for joining us today, and look forward to seeing you again next time.